Kia ora, hello, I'm Garry Hornby, and like Alison Kearney, whose video you've probably just seen, I'd like to welcome you to this course on learning and behaviour diversity. Alison Kearney and I both co-coordinate the learning behaviour strand of the postgraduate diploma in specialist teaching, and we've developed this learning behaviour diversity paper together. And that's been based on the feedback we received from the RTLB Advisory Committee and the National Survey and various other sources. So we've set out and devised this program, and what's happened is that Alison has been responsible for domains 1, 2 and 6, and I've been responsible for domains 3, 4 and 5. We both work with different teams of people. As Alison has said, there's probably over 20 people involved in the development of it, so we hope it'll be of interest to you. And but you will probably see that there are different styles and emphases in the different domains from the ones which Alison's team have developed and the ones that mine have. And I think this is going to add to a little bit of, make it a bit more interesting for you, the different modes of learning, and hopefully we've introduced a wide range of strategies and practices that will be useful to you. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my background's quite different to Alison's, as you probably work out from my accent. I was born and brought up in the north of England, not too far from Coronation Street, and I did a degree at Leeds University in physics, and then had a short time in the USA in Rhode Island working at a residential school for children with emotional and behavioural difficulties and ones with other disabilities. So sort of got into special education really by chance, and then went back to England for a while and emigrated to New Zealand in 1971 as a secondary school teacher of maths and science, and taught in mainstream schools there for about 3 years, getting more and more involved with special needs kids, and then got a job in the experience class at Tamaki College, where I taught for 3 years adolescents with what would we say, moderate learning difficulties. I really enjoyed that, and during this time I was I started doing some study through Massey University, interestingly enough by correspondence. So that's Massey that got me started in my study, and in 1973, using distance learning, and then I went on to finish off a BA and an MA in education at Auckland University, and did the DipEd Psych training to become a psychologist. My tutors included Ted Glynn, who many of you know, Mary Clay of course, Vivian Robinson, Stuart McNaughton, people like that. And when I was a psychologist then in the psych service in Auckland, the chief psychologist at that time was Don Brown. And as many of you realise, Don Brown and Ted Glynn were really the foundation force behind the RTLB movement and RTLB training. So it's a pleasure to have worked with those two. Yes, so from the experience class then and psych service, I got a job at Auckland College of Education in 1984, and from then on I've been a lecturer in special education and educational psychology, and I've worked at 3 different teachers' colleges, or colleges of education, whatever you call them, in 3 different countries, and also at 3 different universities in those countries. I've worked in New Zealand, England, and in Barbados in the Caribbean. So I've been a sort of developing courses for teachers now for too many years. Okay, so just a little bit. Alison mentioned her master's thesis and PhD. I'll mention my topics. My thesis for my master's thesis was on working with parents, workshops for parents of children with disabilities, and I ran the workshops and evaluated them. So that really, and my time in the experience class really got me interested in working with parents. And then my PhD, which I did at Hull University, the topic was the effects on fathers of having children with disabilities. I started that research when I was a researcher at Manchester University, so time back in England then. After that time in England, I had 2.5 years in Barbados working as a consultant for special education for the ministry, and then back to England for a bit, and then came out to New Zealand in 2002 to work at Canterbury University as a Professor of Education. So, as you probably gather, I published quite a bit, as one has to do, and as a lecturer these days. All my books are focused on really teachers and teaching and improving education. I've got 12 books now, and the focus of many of them is either parents or my other special interest, which is the theory and practice of special and inclusive education. Well, the parent book, I hope you'll get to grips with the improving parental involvement, which we've prescribed as the textbooks for the course, and this book has a lot of my experience as a teacher and as a psychologist in Auckland, and some good anecdotes there that I hope you'll find interesting, and supports my belief that working with parents is a key factor in being effective with children with learning or behavioural difficulties. And when I say working with parents, I mean working with parents and obviously with families and whānau as well. The other area of my interest has been the theory and practice of special and inclusive education, and I have a different approach to the inclusion movement to Alison, which is good because we complement each other quite well, I think. My emphasis has been on what I now call moderate inclusion, where I believe that although the majority of children with special needs can be catered for in mainstream schools and classes, I believe there will always be a need for special units and special schools to provide effective education for some children who just can't realistically be catered for in mainstream schools. So I'm a moderate inclusionist, and if you want to check out my views and my rationale and my explanation for what I believe, then if you skip ahead to Domain 5, Book 1, Chapters 1.9, and there's an overview PowerPoint there of my views on inclusive education, and there's I think there's 2 articles and a book chapter that I've done that will tell you what my views are. My priorities in education very much mirror the Ministry of Education Schooling Strategy document, which came out a few years ago. The priorities in that, the 3 priorities in that, are my priorities too, which are 1, to help improve the quality of teaching, 2, to improve the involvement of parents, family and whānau in the education of their children, and 3, to develop more evidence-based practice. And those 3 areas guide a lot of the work that I do, and you'll see those emphases come out in the domains which I've been responsible for. I firmly believe that teachers can make a huge difference to children's lives, as my teachers have done to my life, and I think that as RTLBs we're privileged to be able to work with children and their families, and to work with other teachers to help develop teachers to be able to also work effectively with kids. So by working with and through other teachers, RTLB can have tremendous influence on what happens to children with special needs. So in conclusion, I hope you find this course informative and enjoyable, and I look forward to working with you on it. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, bye.